Yippee-ki-yay, mother. It's episodes 4, 5, 6. Yes, our annual top 10. Not the 10 greatest stories, but the 10 stories that Stuart and I ranted about in 2026 25, sorry. If you missed the last batch, please go watch our previous episode. It was actually a lot of fun. We did numbers 7 through 10. And it's interesting because when we do this kind of thing, people say, like, oh my God, I can't believe these are the themes that we've covered in Jesus 150 odd episodes every year that we do. So this is what episodes 4, 5, and 6 will look like. And what a surprise that episode number 6, or our theme number 6, I should say, is woke dead. It's interesting because when Donald Trump was elected, it was about crushing wokeism. I mean, that was it. I mean, he was all over this. And at a certain point, we thought maybe it is a little bit on the back burner. But just like a bad upset stomach, sometimes it just doesn't want to go away, and it comes up again, but in a different form. Stuart, is woke dead in 2025?
Well, woke culture isn't fading because people became intolerant of it. It's fading because it's unlivable. It promised fairness, David. It delivered division.
Mm-hmm.
It promised inclusion and enforced exclusion. And over time, the contradictions became impossible not only to ignore, but to live. Because most people don't want to live in a society where language is policed. David, you've policed my language over the years. You've brought up words that are no longer considered relevant because they are hurtful. The intent is irrelevant, and the disagreement is treated as harmful. They want stability, opportunity, and fairness under consistent rule. But the ideology requires consistent escalation to survive, burning out any single thing that would make sense because it's, censorship, not outlawing things, making things free to do. It's dying because it's unlivable, David. And so Americans don't want to wake up and fight culture wars or color wars. Opportunity, is what drives the Western economy and the Western life. And woke couldn't offer that. It became unstable fuel.
Sorry, but I think woke hasn't died. Woke is still there. And I appreciate what you just said, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I love the idea, the philosophy. Woke ain't dead, though. It just morphed. It's like everything else, it's morphed. We just talked about it on our rant from the other day, is what's being taught in the classroom. We've just talked about this numerous. Look how many times we've talked about it's not called woke. In fact, the left doesn't even like the term anymore, even though it was their term to start. They don't like the term because they realized what it's now connotating. So they're changing, just like Cracker Barrel tried to change its logo and its look. Woke is trying to do the same thing, but the menu's the same, the food's the same, the furniture's the same, the people's attitudes are the same, the attitude is the same. It's woke isn't dead. It's just it's morphing into a different body, Stuart. You're right, it's intolerable. But woke ain't going anywhere.
David, we got to thank Harvard University for creating such crazy insanity. And they practice a religion, and I think that's the problem. They're trying to create a new religion, and I think wokeness is going to be one of those religions that ultimately will die.
You hit the nail on the head. I think you hit it's the best word you could. But I would have changed the word religion to cult, because a religion, there's a certain deity and a certain whatever. Here, the deity or the cult, the movement is an ideology that just, it's when you think about it, it doesn't make real sense. But, you got to push it and you got to push it. And the priests that are pushing these ideologies, they're standing on these pulpits and they're saying these things that people are like, yeah. And when you think about it, it's like, what are you talking about? It's just you said it. Many Americans, many Canadians are kind of scratching their heads going, what is that garbage? But wokeism hasn't died. We're still seeing it in the classroom. We're still seeing it with politics. We're still seeing it in media. Yesterday, Stuart, I was traveling, and there's MS Now, the new bullshit of MSNBC, pushing woke ideology on TV as if it's normal stuff. It's not. It's a cult. You hit it right on the head. This is a cult, and like all other cults, they fade away.
Now that shifts us right into the next subject.
Mm.
Number 5, media shifts. The media didn't drift accidentally, David. It chose an alignment. Once storytelling replaced reporting, credible became expectable. Viewers noticed long before the executives admitted. David, the collapse in trust in the media arena didn't come because the audience wanted it. David?
Oh, actually, the audience screamed loud and clear. Because I'll quote Michael Jordan that even Republicans buy sneakers. Republicans watch late night shows, or at least they used to. And the Jimmy Kimmels of this world and the rest of them are all wondering why their show's being canceled. Well, it's really simple. It's because you're not funny. And if you cater to one group of people, then so be it. But Stuart, what's happening is you've seen a lot of these so-called media folks disappear, and then they reappear in podcasts. So while the media houses were threatened and sued, like ABC, CBS, with the 60 Minutes, re-editing of the Kamala Harris, interview, ABC called, George Stephanopoulos, defaming the president of the United States, and now BBC slapped with a bazillion-dollar lawsuit because they edited, they edited a speech that Trump gave, but from two different parts of his speech, and they spliced it together to make it sound like one. Excuse me. The amazing thing, folks, is that the media tried to push, and for the first time, you've got a president who's using power and saying, you can't get away with that. And you're not to get away with it. And so while CBS has brought in Barry Weiss, and I talked about her in previous episodes, she's now the new news director, and she's trying to pivot them back to the center, almost a Walter Cronkite-like kind of pivot. The unfortunate thing is that within the media, there is this rebellion. That again, they hold this, we just talked about wokeism. They hold this moral higher ground that you and I, no, we're not moral. We're not morally at all. In fact, we're the opposite. We're immoral because we disagree with their woke philosophies. News is supposed to be reporting about what happens, not why you think it happens. You are supposed to have at least two credible sources, not a bunch of, philosophies, not a bunch of people who think they know what's going on. But media has gone away from that. And the problem is that as soon as you fire somebody who goes beyond that, they have a podcast. And
David,
you hold on. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson, who stands up and says whatever he wants. And on the other side, you have a Don Lemon. Or you have, others who are just preaching this hatefulness. So media is pivoting in 2025, Stuart. And with this, I'll wrap it up with this. If you recall at the beginning of the year, excuse me, the press secretary announced that certain people won't be welcome into the press room, but they brought in podcasters. How dare they? The media lost their minds because this was the media room. Folks, people's consumption of media have changed a lot. You haven't. Wakey, wakey.
Until journalism remembers its role, not as a moral referee, not as political actors, but as disciplined seekers of truth, the decline will continue because credibility isn't owned by an institution, it's granted by the public. And once it's lost, it's very difficult to bring it back. David, introduce.
Well, Stuart, you know what? Speaking of media, the saddest part, I think one of the sad parts of 2025, I'm not saying but one of the saddest parts of 2025 was the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And for many people didn't know who Charlie Kirk was until he died. Heard a lot of his stuff, his messages, and while I did not agree with 100% of everything that he said, I had respect for this guy who was able to debate, was able to articulate, and was able to support his argument with facts. But when it was his opinion, he said it was his opinion, something unfortunately many on the left never learned. But the media decided that he was a villain, and many on the left vilified him, and in ways that was just beyond disgusting. Stuart, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and I'm saying it was an assassination, I'll tell you something. I was never more disgusted by the media and people in America.
Hmm. You know, Charlie Kirk represented a generational shift. It's hard to talk about because he didn't rise because he thought approval of the academic elites or the media gatekeepers. He rose by meeting young people and debated them on their platform. He refused to play by the rules to be silenced. And what was unsettling was the critics and the rhetoric as ensued. When his ideas became dangerous and were challenged openly, they doubled down. You're right. I also didn't agree with all of Charlie Kirk's views, as I don't agree with any or all, of Donald Trump's views or not agreeing with any of Biden's views. That is the beauty of a free country. I can agree with some things and not everything, and not really want to cancel you. I would rather prepare counter arguments, which Charlie Kirk was beyond any politician, religious figure, news feature, anything I've ever seen in my life. He promoted a healthy society of not fearing debate, not being afraid of not being influenced by the wealth or the institutional backers. Charlie Kirk rose and was murdered for those simple views. And like you, David, I did see and hear about Charlie Kirk early in his career because I actually did see his initial Fox News invitation where he skipped school. And again, as you see behind me, watch news all day long. And the fact that the media gatekeepers preached and asked for his murder, and the politicians that denied him the platform to debate freely, openly, whatever the students wanted, is why I believe this death will be considered a martyrism and will breed a whole new culture that will bring life to Charlie Kirk for years to come.
What's sad is that Charlie did something that the left hates. He had facts, he had knowledge, he debated openly. And he debated in a way where you never heard him yell and scream. You didn't hear him vilify and accuse somebody. You rarely heard him even embarrass or denounce someone. Often he was accused of things that were not true. And you could see that he was exacerbated of having to repeat himself. He talked about Israel in a way that I wish Jews wouldn't talk about Israel. He visited it, he fell in love with Israel, and he supported Israel to the nth degree. And he made arguments against the left that the left itself had no idea what it was talking about. Yeah, he had philosophies that where he was a firm Catholic, and he believed in certain philosophies that I don't agree with. And you know what, Stuart? Agreeing with somebody 100% and surrounding yourself with people who only agree with you isn't a healthy thing. That folks, is what you're getting on social media. And that's what you're getting in very often in the groups and the cults that you're surrounded by. And yes, they are cults. And when we talked about, woke is a cult, that's where you're surrounding yourself. You're surrounding yourself around people who are telling you you're right, even though you're wrong. And Charlie Kirk brought out facts, brought out an argument that people couldn't figure out. And that was the beauty of it. But instead, the left celebrated his death because it was someone who was actually going to pivot America. Now, TPUSA is going around and trying to and is opening up, in so many different campuses. And what are they doing instead, Stuart? These campuses, they're trying to shut them down.
Yep.
We talked about this in our earlier rant, how the schools are trying to brainwash the students, and TPUSA is bringing a different view, a different angle, and they're being told you're not welcome.
Yep.
Goes to show you what Charlie Kirk was trying to do was right, was to rebalance the conversation. It wasn't about convincing people to go from left to right, but rebalance so people can actually know both sides of an argument and they can make their own decision. You want to stay on the left? Fine, as long as you know what the right is saying and vice versa. That's all he was trying to push. But God forbid, Stuart, that the left would agree with this because they have no way of arguing anything because it's only about emotion. It was never about fact. And Charlie was more about fact until it was his beliefs. And then he said, these are my beliefs. You don't have to agree with them, but these are my beliefs. Stuart, that wraps up.
I wanted to give a last little thing on
Go for
Charlie
it.
Kirk.
Go ahead.
Charlie Kirk wasn't powerful because of what he said. He was influential because the way he said it. And the difference was society wasn't confident, so it had to shut down the debate. He invited debate. And the louder he called, the more they wanted to silence the clearer message. The problem isn't dissent, David. The problem was how weak the left was because this man deplatformed the American collegiate environment.
It wasn't only the collegiate. What was very impressive is if you saw him on podcasts or you heard him wherever he went, and even guys like Bill Maher, who said he didn't always agree with Charlie Kirk, but even he was sickened by the fact that the left celebrated his death. He said this was a guy who all he wanted to do was have a conversation, and he died for his beliefs. That is where the moral sanity of America has gone to the toilet. With that, ladies and gentlemen, those are themes 4, 5, and 6. We will be back next episode of Top 3 of 2025. Love you, folks. Catch you.